discussion between design, communication, local cultures, and creativity. So the presentation is somehow related to the presentation we previously had. And his presentation today is named Design Education Between Past and Future, Pedagogical Actions Towards Heritage Preservation. So the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Vida. Good morning to everyone. It is a pleasure to be in this session among such honorable lady authors, as you mentioned, and is also a pleasure to be participating here at this conference. I'd like to begin by saying bon dia, good morning to all of you. I'd like to cheer the audience. Yes, we have a very participated session, which is fantastic. And I also like to congratulate all the organization and all the committees, namely the Pixel team, which they are always very efficient. And of course, I think everyone feels the same way, because it makes all the machine work very smoothly, and things turn out on a very successful way, not just because of us authors, but of course the organization is also a very important part. My name is Jorge Pereira. I'm from Portugal, as Vida introduced me, and I will be presenting this paper entitled Design Education Between Past and Future, Pedagogical Actions Towards Heritage Preservation. And let me say, I had the happiness of being introduced previously by the communication by Maria, which I think makes a very interesting bridging between what she presented and what I am going to show you on a more specific way, another context, but I think it has a mutual understanding of the value of culture towards design and towards education of creative education of students. So the following paper develops the research of design education between past and future, starting from a global outlook that deals with methods, strategies, and creativity, and copes with new and more complex challenges and work forms. Describing a pedagogical action in higher education in Portugal, focus on heritage preservation in order to achieve these goals. As a pedagogical field that extends beyond visual mediation, it acknowledges and promotes alternative expressions of knowledge, addressing possible design roles in terms of the overall cultural change, and in particular, in this case study presented in the paper, towards a local heritage preservation. So the starting framework is this. Theoretically, heritage preservation is a trending topic in current scenario of creative education and research. Its knowledge and corpus present a sustained potential to become a territory for design action and for design pedagogy, contributing towards its inscription and, of course, consequently, its preservation. In recent years, there has been a growing interest on how design can augment cultural development, create meaningful links between cultural, economy, and society, and bridge gaps between its own theory and practice. Design, designers, design educators, all of these as active agents in communication and in society must assume a responsible citizenship role, contributing with their actions to the improvement of their contexts and communities of intervention. And in this context, design may have an important role to play. So the integration of design research projects with heritage preservation, such as this one I'm presenting, can enhance instructional methodologies and strategies, requiring educators to build upon their role in a teaching-learning dialogue. And this also contributes to adding new context to the dynamics of classes, enriching the activities, and inviting students to explore, to take risks, and actively engage with the search for primary information, which refers to the themes at work. So this brings us to this pedagogical action held in Barcelos on the north of Portugal, where my polytechnic is held. So the pedagogical action presented consisted of a global interpretation of project development in graphic design in a practice-based research process towards cultural and heritage preservation. Cultural heritage has a universal value for all of us as individuals, as communities, and as a society, and it is an opportunity to communicate culture. So integrated in the process of higher education in graphic design, namely on the BA degree in graphic design of the School of Design of the Polytechnic Institute of Cabo da Nave, within the structuring curricula of design project, this pedagogical process identifies a couple of main objectives which are presented here at the slide. I highlight the last one, which is this transversal goal to develop the capacity for critical thinking regarding the different perspectives of design, its role in society, and tendencies, which, for instance, brings me up here to a education conference, and of course allows us to bridge these thematics or these specific themes with a lot of other contexts and a lot of other areas of research. The methodology for the project is based on Bruce Archer's three-stage design process, developed in 3 moments of the project development. The design and methodology related to its constitution as a scientific activity fomented a search in the theorization about the specific doing of design, attributing to all the stages a meaning of their own resulting from the objectives that were determined in an initial and exploratory phase. Bruce Archer, the author, promoted the use of a systems-level analysis in a design process based on evidence and evaluation through experimentation. Archer systematized his proposal in the so-called three-phase model, where the design process will be this creative mix, the limitations of the objectives and the systematic analysis, always having the creative act as a structure. First, on an analytical phase, from which information is compiled, organized, and evaluated, conditioning factors are defined and the hierarchy is structured. The problem, programming, and obtaining information. On the second phase, the creative phase, is in which analysis, synthesis, and creative development are applied. And on the executive phase, in which a critical appreciation of the previous phase is developed, ideas are adjusted, and the design process and the interactive process with other players is developed in the definition of the proposal and also the solution. And communication and visual communication also becomes part of these objectives that are inherent to the development of the result. It focuses in a teaching learning research bias, which is focused on heritage preservation identities, traditions, and systems of knowledge, establishing a mediation pedagogy that open up territories for further expansion of theory and practice. By applying this methodology to the pedagogical action and by its success, a learning ladder is established between understanding, meaning, and action, which is added here to the student's training process by active processes and pedagogical construction that are not previously observable or susceptible to experimentation. I now show you a few samples of these design outputs and the discussion that this arose. Thus, rebooting the methodology described about teaching learning activity, students' assignment was organized as follows and as described. Okay, I'm concluding, Vida, thank you. In the first phase, the analytical phase, the cultural heritage case study from a museum in Barcelos, which has works of art and documentary archives with more than 500 years. The cultural heritage of the case study to communicate was identified. It foresees the development of research on site or in related and tangential projects and their critical reflection to the concept of work to work on. In the second phase, the creative phase, is the study and implementation of the graphic components of the project. So it foresees the methodological phasing in moments of analysis, synthesis, and practical development of the communication supports. And here the visual graphics are developed. So, as I mentioned, I'm highlighting some of these outputs accordingly. And in the third phase, the executive phase, the project is concluded in terms of communication and its dissemination, including its final presentation. So, given the characteristics of this assignment, of this student's assignment, the examples are very diverse in terms of graphic languages, which is developed in the process of research and particular investigation. The starting point is poster design as a practice-based activity, to which 3 additional communication outputs are added accordingly to the topic and research options conducted by the students. Considering the success achieved in the assignments, in the learning process, and above all, in the implementation of project methodology, the pedagogical actions are an interesting contribution to the discussion about graphic design training in higher education. So the successful implementation of this bridge also brings more cognitive maturity to students, combined with a deeper understanding of pedagogical process in general, providing an accentuated view of the role of design and learning process that is built with understanding of a world and of real issues. It focuses in a teaching, learning, research bias, as I mentioned, focused on heritage preservation, identities, traditions, and systems of knowledge, establishing a mediation pedagogy that open up territories for further expansion of theory and practice. Thank you very much. Let's keep in touch. If you have any inquiries or questions, please feel free to chat with me.
Thank you, George. And I see that we have one question in our chat. So it's related to intellectual property rights as well. So Maria is asking if handcraft designs and as industrial design, according to the special ID law, are protected, or there is protection for handcraft designs as copyright law only in Portugal.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Maria, first of all, for the question. Yes, there are intellectual property laws in Portugal about this, and specifically with this case that is related with handicrafts. And there's a decision that a lot of communities of practice are making, that it's according to the, I think, European legislation. I don't want to talk about or make assumptions of something I'm not 100% confident about, okay? But I've been engaged with a research project that is related to this, handicraft design and communities of practice, which allow me some self-promotion, but that I presented last year on this event as well, on this conference last year. And what is happening, and this is a common trend on a lot of case studies and contexts, is that the groups of artisans and the practitioners are making the registration of their community as an association, for instance. And by that they create strategies to certify those products or those outputs that they produce. By that said, that gives them and frames their production in like a protected environment for their products, for their authenticity. And by that said, and then, by that way, they are protected for copyright issues, or for against copycats or something like that might produce similar products. That's one of the ways they can do it. But yes, there are legislation about this, there are laws about this, but they are not a Portuguese specific context. They are based on European legislations, and that are, of course, then translated into the national context. And I think, just to conclude, one of the things that the Maria presented previously on the previous communication was related with in 2018, the European Year of Cultural Heritage, where a lot of activities and a lot of discussions around this issue arise, and it became a trend in order to certify and to protect these local communities of practitioners and artisans. And all of a sudden we understood that the value, it became more present, the value of the symbolic value of these products, and trying to bridge them and translate them into economic value as well.
Thank you. Very small question, and I wish to ask for your personal opinion, as it is really important to be responsible citizen when we talk about heritage protection. So, according to you, what is the most important skill that person has to have, or youth have to grow?
I think it's not. That's an important thing, and that doesn't have to do with the design education. It has to do with citizenship, as you said. I think there are two main competencies, or two main assets that are really necessary, and we need to work on them on an interdisciplinary way. One of them is this capacity to be aware, this awareness of the evidences of this heritage, because, for instance, this case study I presented is a museum archive of an institution in Barcelos, on northern Portugal, which has works of art and documentary books with more than 500 years. And it's not part of the local cultural scene. It's like a private museum, and they are defining or devising plans to open this, to making this an open project. And for instance, the previous communication mentioned in Rome, for instance, the local citizens also are not aware of their own tangible heritage. And the other asset, I think it's absolutely necessary, is about sensitivity. People have to be sensible to these themes. Cultural, of course, this is a very difficult discussion regarding the value of culture. Why it's important to keep culture and fight for culture, of course. But I think this idea of sensitivity, people have to be sensible. People have to be willing and eager to take part of these cultural events, and make them a real topic on their own personal agendas and daily lives. So I think awareness and sensitivity are probably two of the core ideas about this. I think.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you very much for your answers and the time dedicated for this conference. So now, saving the time, I would like to ask Maria to make her presentation, and Maria is